My friend, I will make this both short and sweet. In this hands-on lab nugget, we are going to install the NSX Manager onto the vSphere cluster. So to get that experience of installing the NSX Manager, we're here at labs.hol.vmware.com for a hands-on lab. We're doing the Getting Started lab with NSX, and if we jump to page 16 here in the lab manual, you can see that there's an interactive simulation to walk through the process of actually getting that installed. So we'll go ahead and click that link to open up the simulation. Just so you know, simulations are an exception to the rule. There's only a couple of labs that are going to be based upon the simulation. The rest are all going to be live sandboxes with lots of opportunities for us to goof up and have to correct our mistakes. Since we're doing this together, we're going to go ahead and hide the notes. Don't need to see those right now. Our first job is pretty straightforward. We're here to deploy an OVF file. That's a VMware template that is going to deploy our appliance. So we'll click on Hosts and Clusters. And then from Hosts and Clusters, we're going to expand out the appropriate cluster, which is our management cluster. If we take a quick look at the organization here, we notice that there's a compute cluster versus a management cluster, all under the guidance of this single vCenter server. This is a standard approach for an extensible environment, something that can grow over time without having conflict between the compute resources and the management resources. So we're going to expect our management components to be installed here. So that's going to be the NSX Manager, that'll be edge components, that'll be the controllers, right? All of those elements are going to be here in the management. And these components will end up affecting what's going on in the compute area because that's where we're going to end up seeing distributed components performing their functions. When we click on that management cluster, we see we can deploy an OVF template to the cluster. So we'll select that, deploy OVF template. And now we just need to browse and grab the file. We'll choose that, browse, and there is the VMware NSX Manager. This one's 6.4.1 OVA. Again, how do we get that? Real world, we would have downloaded that from the VMware website with our authorized account having purchased the NSX package. We'll go ahead and click Open, and then Next. You can see the default name up here, and we're going to go ahead and replace that with NSX MGR-01A, and then we'll click Next. Running the deployed template is going to be performed on the management cluster, and we're going to select ESX04A.corp.local, and then click Next. On the details page, it extracts some information from that template, so we know we're deploying the NSX Manager, the version from VMware, and we have the default sizes to be aware of there as well. We'll go ahead and click Next. We'll accept the license, and then click Next. Now, this can be thick or thin provision. We're going with a thick provisioning, and we're choosing an iSCSI shared data store that's available, of course, to all the nodes in the management cluster because we want to have this failover. Assuming that this is an HA-supported cluster, we want failover to be available, of course, for the NSX Manager virtual appliance, just like any other VM. Let's click Next. Now, we need to select the correct network to deploy this to. So from our drop-down menu here, we're going to select VM region A01 from the distributed switch for management. And then we'll click Next. A couple of properties need to be specified that have to be corrected for the specific location that we're currently in. So we're going to put in a DNS server of 192.168.110.10. And then we're going to click in the domain search list. And there we're going to put in corp.local as the default domain for searching. We'll expand the twizzle here for network properties and jump down to the default gateway. How do we get out of here, man? That's going to be 192.168.110.1 for the IP4 gateway. And then we'll click in the field for the host name for this virtual machine and type in NSX MGR-01A. Scroll down. When we scroll down, we can now put in the actual IP address of the NSX Manager. And for that, we're going to put in 192.168.110.42 for the IPv4 address. And then for the network mask, we'll use a 255.255.255.0 subnet mask. We'll expand our services configuration and enable SSH support so that we can directly connect using a client such as PuTTY. And then we'll click in the blank for the NTP server and put in the IP address of our local NTP server, which is at the DNS name of router.corp.local. Then we'll scroll down to the very bottom, expand the twizzle, then we'll scroll down, And then we need to enter in a couple of passwords. So we'll put in a password for the default command line interface user, capital VM, lowercase WARE, 1 exclamation point. Click in the confirm password and put that password in again. And then for the command line interface privilege mode, not just looking but actually making changes, we'll click in there for the enter password field and we'll put in the same password in this case. Real world, we might want to put in a different password rather than putting in the same password for both user level and privilege mode access. And a gentle reminder, please never, ever, ever use VMware 1 exclamation point as a password for anything you do in real life. We'll expand the Twizzle for the Customer Experience Improvement Program. Click to scroll down, and we have the default checkmark in place that allows for VMware to collect information from the NSX Manager to improve the product over time. We'll go ahead and click Next, and there's a review. We'd want to make sure that all of these settings are correct before clicking the ultimate Finish button. For now, let's just click Finish. We'll expand recent tasks. Real world, this takes several minutes to actually go through the process of importing and deploying that template. We'll go ahead and click the close for that recent task window. Then in the management cluster, we can see our new appliance, NSX Manager 01A. We can right click on it, then we can go head up to power, and then we can choose power on. Again, in a high availability cluster, once this is up and running and on, it's going to assume to keep that on from now on. Let's go ahead and click up at the top to add a new tab, and we'll click in the address bar, and let's actually connect to that virtual machine. Real world, we'd want to wait a little longer to allow that machine the chance to fully boot. We'll put in the address of https://192.168.110.42. Go ahead and press enter. The virtual appliance does have its own native interface. We'll go ahead and click in the blank for username. We'll log in as admin, and the default password, as we remember from our earlier configuration, was capital VM, lowercase WARE, 1 exclamation point. And then we'll click Login. There's a very limited set of functions that we're going to perform by connecting to the manager itself using this web interface. So let's click View Summary. Again, we can see our configuration on the left. We see our use of resources on the right. Then down at the bottom, we see the various services, such as the SSH service, which we enabled. If we will change our mind and we want to disable it, you can see it's easy to stop. And then we see the database and message queuing service are enabled and running here. And the synchronization is not running by default. That's fine. The important thing is to make sure that the management service is up and running. And on our first boot, sometimes that can take up to 5 minutes, so definitely don't want to panic if we don't see it running immediately in a real-world situation. Let's click the Home icon in the upper left-hand corner. And now let's go to Manage Appliance Settings. Here in the appliance settings, we see we've got a collection of different types of settings on the left-hand side. Here in the General tab, we want to go ahead and forward information to a syslog server, so we'll click the Edit button in the syslog server dialog box. Let's type in log-01a.corp.local. That is the address of the syslog server. We'll click in the port field and type in the default port of 514, and the drop-down menu will use UDP, the default protocol. Then we'll click OK. We'll go ahead and follow the link back to home. And let's take a look at managing the vCenter registration. This is absolutely critical because without this configuration, we don't have the ability to actually use the functionality that NSX gives us. So first, we're going to reference the lookup service URLs. We'll click the edit button next to that. The lookup service host is our vCenter server at vcsa-01a.corp.local. And we'll click in the field for the SSO administrator username, type in administrator at vSphere.local. In your own environment, of course, it'll be whatever your SSO domain is. And then we'll click in the blank for the password. And the password in this case is VMware 1 exclamation point. Then we'll click OK. We'll say yes to the thumbprint. Now that our lookup service is in place to pass on credentials between NSX and vCenter server, we're going to go down and actually connect to the vCenter server itself. So we'll click the second edit link, click in the field for the vCenter server, and once again put in vcsa-01a.corp.local. We'll click in the vCenter username and put in administrator at vSphere.local, and then we'll click in the field for the password and put in VMware 1 exclamation point and click OK. And then say yes to the certificate. And we are connected. Now while we're here, we're going to finish up with one last thing, and that's actually to go to Backup and Restore. Because now that we've got all these settings in place, it would be great if we did not have to go through and set them all up by hand. We could quickly restore those settings if we ever have to redeploy or these settings get corrupted over time. So we're going to back these up to an FTP server. We'll just click Change next to FTP Settings, and then we'll put in an IP address of 192.168.110.10. From the drop-down menu for protocol, we'll choose FTP. We'll click in the blank for the username and put in FTP user. We'll click in the password field and once again put in VMware1! We'll click in the backup directory and we'll type in /NSX Manager. We'll click in the blank for field file name prefix, and we're going to put in NSX_manager_. And then for the passphrase, wouldn't you know it, VMware1! And then we'll click OK. We'll click in the scheduling configuration. We'll click Change there. And from the drop-down menu for backup frequency, we'll choose Weekly. Day of the week, we'll choose Sunday. We'll go to the hour of the day, select 0, go to minute, and select 5. So at 5 after midnight every Sunday, we make sure that these configuration settings are backed up. We'll go ahead and schedule that. And then we can also perform a manual backup right now. So we'll just click the backup button, click Start, and that also will back up our configurations to that configured FTP server. We'll go ahead and close the NSX Manager. Well done, the initial installation of the NSX Manager is complete. We'll go ahead and click the link to return to the lab. You're probably timed out. You can click return to your lab and it'll reset you. And that completes the first part of the simulation. And again, if you want to take a look at the individual steps, you can review that in the documentation that's there on the hands-on lab at vmware.com. When you boil it all down, what did we do? We installed an NSX OVF file into our management cluster. We ensured that it was residing on the right host, in the right storage, and connected to the right switch for distributed networking. In deploying it, we also set it up with its initial IP address. Once it's deployed, we can connect to that IP address, and we can further set up some properties, such as pointing it to the syslog server, or how about pointing it to the single sign-on service and to vCenter itself to actually do that integration between the NSX Manager and vSphere. And we saw we can also use that tool to back up our NSX configuration in a manual or scheduled way. So by going through this hands-on lab together, you've had a chance to actually see what does it look like to install the NSX Manager into your vSphere environment, so that when it comes time for that initial deployment in your world, you can step to it with confidence. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.